Welcome to the Jarol SVU channel. Today we have the Han1 Blue Tech. I've been having a lot of successes playing this deck recently. Leave a like and subscribe, and let's start. I achieved 7-1 with this deck in the regular season of TTI. I might have even won the game I lost, but I made an incorrect sideboard. The deck also performed quite well in local weekly tournaments. Why Han1 and why with blue and not with a more traditional color? As you probably know, in the past he was mainly played with green and yellow, and now he's not played at all, out of fear of force decks playing force row, which is very painful for Han1. This is because this leader relies heavily on the mechanics of putting cards from his hand into resources, especially on the first turn, and on 5 resources to get out faster and try to reach 7 resources in the same turn. And to avoid running out of cards, we play him with blue, as this color offers the most card draw options. Yoda, Red Squadron X-Wing, Watto, or sometimes OP1. In this deck we play all of those cards except Red Squadron X-Wing, and it was replaced by Watto, which has greater potential because its ability can be used multiple times. Moreover, Han1 stands out among other leaders primarily for its ability to play a card for 7 on 5 resources and the ability to play free drop in the first round. For 7 with blue we have Luke Skywalker, one of the strongest finishers in the game, and if the opponent prevents Han from gaining 7 resources, besides Falcon for 6 with Smuggle, you can sometimes play Rival's Faults, an extremely powerful removal that can kill every unit in the game except Chewbacca and TIE Phantom, including the largest units and leaders. On the first turn, thanks to the combination of Han1 and blue, you can play Yoda, which is very effective against aggro and equally solid against control, because when Yoda dies you draw a card. Watto quickly forces the opponent to increase your hand or create a larger unit with each turn, which can easily execute good trades. Furthermore, against space aggro you can play Concordone Interceptor on the first turn or Village Protectors against Grand aggro. Both of these moves are very powerful and problematic for the opponent. So let's move on to the deck strategy. It's a tempo midrange strategy. The deck strives to be strong against both aggro and control and effectively leverage its advantage against other midranges. Furthermore, it has an acceleration option which allows it to sometimes deal with opponents quickly and often win races even against aggro decks after adjusting them in the first rounds or playing Luke on 5 resources. On the first turn we play L337 or C3PO or add a resource to play a defensive card, or in a slower matchups Yoda or Watto are best. On the second turn we usually play a free card. On the third we play a card from Smuggle or a 4 card if we have enough cards. Finally there is the Han's turn where we try to create a large advantage by playing a strong 7 drop, sometimes a 6. After the Han's turn we try to close out the game or bombard the opponent with further strong plays until we finally win. The hardest part about playing this deck is managing your cards and finding the best play each turn. This deck offers a ton of options thanks to Han's ability, and we will discuss them now. On the first turn we can play L337 or C3PO for 2, but for 3 we can play many different cards, and after gaining a resource, Falcon, Concordone, Yoda, Tech, Watto, Village Protectors. Each of these cards is quite solid on the first turn, but we usually strive to play cards that have smuggles. We smuggle with Smuggler, so not just with regular cards. It's also important to remember that Falcon can be paid for with discarded resources. On the second turn, all 3 of these cards are still an option. If you have a ship, simply sending Han Pilot to it can be a good idea, and you can also consider a force like Kira and Cannon. Kira is slightly stronger in this deck because playing it on 4 can sometimes block a counter on Han's turn. On the third turn we can also consider Han Pilot for 5 on the ground. And then there is the most important turn, Han's turn. We need to make sure we have at least 2 cards for it, because we will have to play one as our 6th resource. Then we bring out Han and check if the opponent has removal. If they don't have any, we probably have a 7 to play. Luke is usually the best option, although it's very worth remembering that, for example, Radiant is often more advantageous against space decks. Against some ground decks, especially if you can't use the -6/-6 effect from Luke, Han unit is better. If the opponent kills or exhausts Han for 6, Falcon for 6 is a very good option. I usually play it from Smuggle, but sometimes Ambush can be useful against space decks and is worth keeping in hand. Another option is Obi-Wan. A very strong card against all ground decks. Sometimes it can be abandoned if there is a high risk that the opponent will play no glory only results and it will have too negative an effect on the table. Another good option is Rival's Fall. The chances of not draw either 6 or 7 are very low, but even in such a case you can play 2 cards for free or for free and for 4 and do well, especially against aggro. When it comes to later turns, the best scenario is obviously throwing 7 after 7 and overwhelming the opponent, but many other options are also quite good. Blue removals can be very useful and deck offers many options the further you go into the late game. Before moving on to the matchups, let's take a look at the sideboard. We swap 3 Guerrilla Soldier with Concordant Interceptors in matchups where Space Sentinels aren't needed. This card can be very strong on the first turn, but also in other situations. 2 Vigilance against aggro, probably instead of Spark of Rebellion. Rivals Fall against decks with large leaders, and Han2 blue or green sometimes against control. 2 Change of Heart against control decks as a finisher. I usually throw 1 Waylay and 1 more card depending on the matchup. Removal when I need more large units or against space aggro. Covers Range instead of Waylay against Force Throw decks. It can be played with Smuggle or discarded and then Force Throw only beats for 1. Redemption as another finisher against space aggro decks. Moving on to matchups, we had a lot of good matchups. All aggro thanks to playing 7s or 6s on 5 is a good matchup. Of course, it is not impossible to lose a game in this matchup, but to do so you need to have bad draws or make mistakes. Yellow Vader has the greatest potential to cause aggro problems because there is the greatest chance of losing without the right cards, but you usually manage to win. And if you want to improve this matchup, you can put on side Clear the Field or Dispartive Burst. Another good matchup is all hard control decks. Han can cause various threats for a long time and easily control the board, and thanks to our blue removals, even the opponent's finishers can't save him. Piet is also a very favorable matchup for this deck because we have a lot of removal to his ships, and besides we're usually simply faster because we play Luke or Radiant on 5. Kylo 5 Tarkin Town is also a good matchup because we can easily take control of the table on Han's turn, then depending from the situation, either finish off the opponent or kill his Kylo with Rival's Fall or another combination. Other Tarkin Tau decks are also good matchups because you can play around pink thanks to Han ability or simply outvalue them in late game. Now we have even matchups with old Palpatine. We're doing everything we can to kill him before he's reached 8 resources. In this matchup it's worth mulliganing for a legendary Falcon and after sight for a Falcon or a Guerrilla Soldier to get a strong start. A strong space move is often a good idea. Against Talzin as against Palpatine, it's often worth mulliganing for an offensive start and playing strong space. If you don't have these options, try not to lose too many cards and make a strong place on Han's turn. This matchup isn't easy, but it's not bad either. Boba for Data Vault is also a close even matchup that can go either way, especially if you're playing against a build with a strong late game. Han to Green or Kit Fisto Green are also usually long even matchups. Now we have the most difficult matchups. There is no good answer to them and the decks make sense because their number is very limited. Yoda Red, Han1 Blue is too slow to kill quickly and then in the late game our world situation is very unfavorable and our chances are minimal. Blue Green Villain soft control decks, the only exception in this category is Kira ICL as there is a chance you can beat it fairly quickly, but in all other builds we're at a significant disadvantage. The chances of winning in the late game are very low and winning in tempo is equally low. Han to Blue has better colors for a long game and rarely we can beat him. Overall, I think this deck is playable even in this meta, but it's still overlooked. I think it's the best version of Han1 in this situation. The link to the list is in the description or in the comment. See you next week. Bye.